Safe from what?
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of End and Explain, and today we are talking about the new supernatural horror thriller film, The Night House. If you're new to the channel though and want to get early videos just like this, be sure to ring that notification bell and give the video a thumbs up. It really does help a lot. And of course, there is going to be all kinds of spoilers as well as behind the scenes looks into this movie, so if you've never seen this movie, be sure to go check it out and then come back. Obviously, spoilers ahead. Here we go in 3, 2, 1. The Night House had its world premiere at the Sundance Film Festival on January 24th, 2020. Shortly after, Searchlight Pictures acquired distribution rights for the film for $12 million. It was scheduled to be released on July 16th, 2021, before the date was moved to August 20th. The film was directed by David Bruckner, who had previously directed the thriller mystery The Ritual for Netflix, a story about a group of friends that get lost in the woods only to encounter supernatural forces that seek to hunt them down. Previously, Bruckner had worked on smaller anthology projects such as Southbound, as well as a film VHS, an anthology segment that would later receive its own spin-off film in the form of 2016's Siren. In February of 2019, it was announced that Rebecca Hall had joined the cast in the leading role of Beth. Hall got her breakthrough role in Christopher Nolan's 2006 film The Prestige, starring Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman, and would later go on to star in films such as Vicky Cristina Barcelona, Frost Nixon, The Town, Iron Man 3, The Gift, and most recently, Godzilla vs. Kong. The cast was then expanded with Sarah Goldberg, who plays Claire, who you may know from the TV show Barry, as well as Vondie Curtis-Hall, who plays Mel, who many know from his role as Ben Ulrich in the Marvel Netflix TV series Daredevil. Rebecca Hall drew inspiration from several notable classics such as Rosemary's Baby, The Shining, Cat People, as well as Robert Rice's original 1963 classic, The Haunting, depicting nothingness. The filmmakers wanted the audience to have a sense that something was both there and not there at the same time. Just as Beth wrestles with the absence of Owen, her mind begins to play tricks on her. There was a lot of discussion about how to depict nothing. The filmmakers termed this entity as negative spaceman. Bruckner conceived of an in-camera optical illusion to effectively use a negative space. Producer David Goyer, who had worked on previous films such as Man of Steel and The Dark Knight, said, "They play on the notion we've all experienced where we wake up in the middle of the night and think you see something. Amidst the shadows, you realize your eyes are playing tricks on you." But in this film, the opposite happens. What Beth thought was a trick turns out to be real. The result is that these subtle manipulations leave the audience feeling unsteady and unsure of what they're seeing, which is exactly the state of mind that Beth descends into. Bruckner also said that he drew inspiration from first perspective art and a popular optical illusion such as Rubens' vase. The film's score was composed by David Bruckner's long-term friend and frequent collaborator, Ben Lovett. Lovett also scored Bruckner's 2007 film The Signal and 2017's The Ritual. Lovett admits that he used a technique called negative harmony, which involves inverting the notes of a melody so that each has a corresponding minor note on the opposite side. That concept was employed in the wedding theme in order to turn it inside out and create a parallel between the main house that Beth was living in and the reverse night house that resides on the opposite side. The result made for some eerie sounds. The score to the film works extremely well and creates an uneasy atmosphere that adds to the film's overall tension. Richard Thompson's The Calvary Cross ironically serves as Beth's wedding song with dark, ominous lyrics. The song later startles her awake one morning following her husband's death, providing a stark juxtaposition between the unraveled bliss of a wedding day and the paralyzing misery of a loved one's passing. Explaining the ending. Reeling from the unexpected death of her husband, the film opens with Beth, who is alone in the lake house that her husband has built for her. She tries as best she can to keep it together, but at night she sleepwalks and is transported to a reality that is otherworldly. She witnesses disturbing visions of a presence she believes to be her husband, but these phenomena disappear before she's able to get close to any of them. These encounters always end with her waking up in the daytime, and the audience is always left wondering if what she is experiencing is real or just a dream. Against the advice of her friends, she begins digging into her husband's belongings, yearning for answers. What she finds are both secrets both strange and terrible, and a mystery she is determined to resolve. Now I'll admit, after watching The Night House for the first time, I was pretty sure I knew what was going on. Clearly this was a case of a woman who was going through a psychological break after discovering that she was essentially married to a psychopath. One that would kill women and bury them in a different house. This theory obviously is the most obvious and makes the most sense. She's drinking often, the text messages that she dreamed about disappear when she wakes up, and the people even around her seem to think that she's unwell.
You're not well, Beth.
I viewed the man she meets in the end as a manifestation of her dread, her means of reconciling the fact that her husband was essentially Patrick Bateman, a serial killer that was struggling to fight his urges to kill. But then I watched it again, and what I came to realize is that there's simply too much evidence in the opposition for this to be just a coincidence of just her having delusions and she's just an unreliable narrator. No, there is more going on. Let's take a look at the evidence that supports this. Number 1, the suicide note. It reads, "You were right. There is nothing. Nothing is after you. You're safe now." I think many will interpret nothing as a void that follows death, a lack of an afterlife, a lack of heaven or hell. But what if Owen was referring to nothing as a malevolent force that was stalking him? What if nothing is an interpretation of Father Death? There is a nothing. Nothing is after you. When Beth was 17, she was in a car accident which resulted in her being killed for 4 minutes. However, when she passed, she didn't have a flatliners moment. She saw nothing. No light at the end of the tunnel, just tunnel. However, after being airlifted away, they were able to resuscitate her and bring her back to life. Since that time, Death has been stalking her to claim the life that it thinks it's owed. Think Final Destination.
I'll see you soon.
Naturally, Death can't outright kill her. It needs another way. So knowing that Owen was the only one who believed in the great beyond, Death tapped into Owen, consistently whispering in his ear to kill her. Owen would sleepwalk in the middle of the night and would go through the same type of experiences that Beth would later on. Now, Owen did make numerous attempts to try to save Beth. For one, he built a house on the other side of the lake, trying to trap it by building a labyrinth of a reversed house similar to the one that they were living in. He tried to bind it to a voodoo doll using spells, and eventually would kill other women that looked just like Beth, hoping that Father Death wouldn't notice. This worked for a while, but eventually Father Death figured it out. After that, Owen took his own life. He thought if he did, that Beth would be safe. Unfortunately, he was wrong, as the spirit continued to haunt her instead. Evidence item number 2, the woman at the bookstore. Another aspect of the story that makes me believe that the dream demon is real is the character of Madeline, the lady at the bookstore. When she shows up at Beth's doorstep, she tells her 2 vital pieces of information. The first being that Owen put his hands on her neck and began to squeeze and then stopped before saying, "It isn't working anymore." The second being, and this one's important, she said she also had a dream in which she and Beth were being chased by some kind of presence. I think what's going on here is that after Owen took his own life, Death knew that he now needed somebody to work on his behalf to go kill Beth. Madeline really is the key to this story, because she is really the only other living character to have come in contact with the malevolent force outside of Beth. I think the reason Mel never heard the gunshot is because Death is very similar to Freddy Krueger in a lot of ways. He's like a death demon that can stalk you in your dreams and cause you to sleepwalk. Of course, one could argue that Madeline never actually showed up at Beth's door that night, that it was all in her head. You could argue that everything supernatural is just a dream, that she was the one who wrote the suicide note and simply doesn't remember doing so. But that theory just feels so boring. I love this ending. I love that it ends with Beth deciding not to give in to killing herself, but rather to live for the people that she cares about, like Mel and Claire. I love how she looks back at the boat and still sees the shadow of the entity staring back at her, implying that it will never leave her alone. It's truly haunting, and generally speaking, just a lot of fun to think about. Editor David Marks put it best when he said, "There's an important idea in this film that there may not be a solution to the problems that we're coping with. However, we can find comfort in the support of loved ones knowing we're not struggling with these problems alone." Of course, this story is about grief, depression, self-destruction, and the sacredness of relationships. But these themes become far more interesting through the lens of a ghost story. In this universe, there is no afterlife. You either become nothingness, or you end up being binded to a house where a demon tortures you night after night. It's terrifying when you really stop to think about it, and I think it's why this film might be a classic in given time. Director David Bruckner said, "Being unable to understand what's real is simply more frightening than the thing that's out to get you." He also said that he was most influenced by films such as Repulsion, Black Swan, Personal Shopper, and The Babadook. He took inspirations from books as well, such as The Turn of the Screw and House of Leaves, both of which deal with a similar kind of madness. The Night House is, at the end of the day, a psychological thriller. Like many of its genre, it uses tropes such as depicting characters that are unstable and unreliable to enhance the suspense and paranoia of the setting and plot, and to provide an overall unsettling atmosphere. I've seen the film 3 times now, and I am still disturbed by the shapes that hide in plain sight. and the ghosts that seem to disappear into the mist of the lake. The jump scares are used sparingly and with purpose, and unlike most modern horror movies, the film never relies on fake-out jump scares just to hit its obligatory scare once every 10 minutes. There is one moment in particular in which a spirit runs past Beth when you think the tension in the scene is over, and it's genuinely unnerving. It reminds me of something terrifying you might see in a horror film from many decades ago. The film is uniquely different from any other horror drama that I've seen before. Unlike most traditional ghost stories where the protagonist is constantly trying to evade the spirits and haunt them, Beth confronts them head on. Her grief has led to her overall sense of apathy and cynicism, in which she no longer fears death but borderline welcomes it, putting the antagonistic force on the defense and having to reevaluate its approach. Again, I can't commend Hall's performance enough. She has the enormous task of bringing the audience with her on her journey of uncertainty, and the film could certainly have been a massive misfire if handled by a lesser actress. David Bruckner has continued to grow as a director, and it really shows here. The pacing is well done, and despite having multiple moments in which we are sitting with Beth in her grief, the film never feels like it halts to a complete stop. I look forward to see what he puts out next, and can only hope that it maintains the same quality as seen here and doesn't suffer too much from studio meddling. I would highly recommend The Night House if you have the opportunity. Being released alongside Hugh Jackman's Reminisce and Michael Keaton's The Protege in the middle of August of all times is likely to make this get lost in the shuffle. However, it is likely to see more of a following in the months that follow when it hits home release. But what did you think of the ending of The Night House? Do you think that Beth was being haunted the entire time, or perhaps her mind just finally cracked? Be sure to sound off in the comments down below, and also if you like this kind of content, be sure to give the video a thumbs up and turn that notification bell on so you don't miss out on upcoming content. The channel just hit 4.9 thousand subscribers, and we're looking to do something big when we hit 5K. So until next time, thank you so much for watching. I've been John here on Burns Reviews, and we will see you next time.